May's little bakery, owned by a middle-aged black woman, had quietly stood at the end of the street for over a decade. Then came the rival, a bakery run by a wealthy white man armed with arrogance, racial prejudice, power, money, and a dirty media machine determined to crush the small shop, not because of its bread but because of her skin color and her kindness. What will May do? Will she fight back or walk away and accept a world that plays by different rules? This isn't just a story about racism, it's an indictment of how deception can be disguised as legitimate and fair. Warning: after this you'll never look at the corner bakery the same way again. As the first rays of sunlight peeked over the low rooftops of Norwood, the crisp morning air carried a warm scent: yeast, cinnamon and apples from the far corner of the street. It came from May's Bakes. Her little shop was tucked between an old laundromat and a nail salon. Its front was a faded wooden door painted pale yellow with a tiny brass bell that jingled sweetly whenever someone stepped inside. Soft golden lights bathed the space in a gentle warmth. Fresh loaves steamed on metal trays, their cracked crusts inviting and fragrant, the scent soaking into the air like a quiet lullaby. May stood behind the counter, hair tied up, sleeves rolled high, her face dotted with flowers. She never cared much for mirrors. In her world what mattered was how high the dough rose, how crisp the crust turned, and the look in a customer's eyes when they took their first bite. Mrs. Miller apple turnover as usual. A soft chuckle answered her. A wrinkled hand reached out from the wooden bench. You've got a good memory, sweetheart. This smell's the only reason I get out of bed these days. May slipped the pastry into a paper bag, tied it gently with a piece of string, and leaned down. Her eyes met the old woman's, a look that needed no words, just a tender kind of knowing. Outside the door a boy lingered, curly hair, messy coat torn at the sleeve, eyes full of hesitation. May didn't ask questions. She just grabbed a small loaf, wrapped it, stepped outside and knelt down. Here, fresh from the oven, careful, it's still hot. The boy looked up, then quickly bowed his head. No thank you. But his eyes, shy and grateful, squeezed something in May's chest. Come by again sometime, she said softly. The lady who runs this place isn't a witch. That night, after the noise of the street died down, May sat alone in the kitchen. The warm yellow light stretched her shadow across the wall like spilled ink. She exhaled slowly. There was a hollow in her chest she couldn't name, like someone had stolen just enough air to make breathing harder. Every day was the same. Up at 5, pack orders, mop floors, knead dough, serve, smile. Every day Mrs. Miller showed up. Every day a few quiet kids wandered in. They didn't say much, but their eyes spoke volumes. Someone once told her, May, you're sweeter than the bread you make. She just smiled, but no one knew May was once the kid hiding beneath the leaky shelter of a Mississippi bus stop. Her mother died in a work accident. No one was punished, for May grew up under glances soaked in pity and spite because she was the daughter of that careless black janitor. She knew what prejudice smelled like. It wasn't like burnt bread. It was like something scorched into your bones, acid, invisible and permanent. One morning a deep bass thumped through the windows, shaking the coffee cup on the counter. May looked up from her fresh loaves and squinted through the foggy glass across the street where an old tailor shop once stood. A brand new bakery now sparkled, its neon sign read Boulangerie Elite, a fancy foreign name that didn't belong in old Norwood. The place had just opened. Crowds Spilled-out luxury cars lined the curb. Staff wore white uniforms, gloves and perfect smiles. Right in the middle stood Walter, tall, polished hair slicked back. Face all smiles. He shook hands, posed for photos and greeted every guest like a politician running for mayor. May froze. His shop was just steps away from hers. And the smell from her oven hadn't even had a chance to spread before it was drowned out by artificial fog machines. Puffing out perfume-scented air. Looks like Norwood has a new flavor, Mrs. Miller sighed as she entered May's shop, her eyes lingering across the street like she'd just lost a piece of her childhood. May smiled gently. Flavor only matters if it's real, but deep inside something stung. It wasn't a competition, it was recognition. She knew men like Walter, and she knew the kind of customers drawn to sleek signs and soft gloves. They didn't look her in the eye, they only saw her skin. A week past Walter's place stayed packed every day. He ran a new ad campaign, imported ingredients, European standard kitchens, real French bakers. He even hired a TikTok crew. One video's caption read, "Why our bread isn't for everyone." It went viral with a sprinkle of sarcasm and a dash of cruelty. May kept baking, but the dough felt softer than usual. Her hands trembled as she filled the molds. One afternoon as she passed Walter's shop, he was shaking hands with a white businessman he saw. May smirked, just a half smile curved it only one side before he turned away like she wasn't there. And just before he disappeared through the glass, he murmured loud enough for her to hear, "Better quality than the kindness across the street." May paused for a moment. She wanted to throw the delivery bag to the ground, but instead she took a deep breath and walked on. That night she Saturday longer than usual in her kitchen, fingers fidgeting with the string she used to tie bags, eyes fixed on the orange glow from the oven. She whispered to herself, "I'm doing what's right. So why does it hurt this much?" The next morning May found a flyer on her doorstep in bold capital letters. "Are you sure your bread meets the health standards?" No signature, no logo, but everyone in Norwood knew where it came from. May didn't react, but the whispers started. Some regulars stopped coming, others just looked around and left. A few asked, "Do you have your certificate of food hygiene and safety?" She nodded, showed them still. They said maybe it was a check through. May kept smiling, but a ripple stirred beneath her calm. That night back at home she found a note shoved under the door, scrolled handwriting, "No name, dirty bread kills even if the baker smiles." For the first time in years May sat on the floor, knees to her chest, in a room filled with silence. The next day she opened her shop at 5 o'clock a.m. Just like always, the dough was kneaded evenly. But this time her eyes were sharp. She noticed things. A strange man stood outside her shop for 5 minutes, never coming in, just watching, taking pictures. A young woman filmed a TikTok in front of Walter's shop, mocking, "Over here you buy bread, over there you buy pity." May realized this wasn't about selling bread anymore. This was a battle for survival, for dignity, for belief. She'd been chosen to prove if kindness could still win. That night another piece of paper, no ink smell, no markings, just scribbled handwriting like it was written in a rush without respect. "What's unclean always starts to stink. You don't belong here." May stared at the message, her face tired but unsurprised. She had seen words like these before on the walls of her middle school and other kids' notebooks. Under The cafeteria tables where she once hid. During sweltering summer recess the world hadn't changed, it had just learned how to disguise cruelty with politeness. May told no one she slipped the paper into a kitchen drawer and locked it away like she had with all the other old wounds, but that night for the first time in years she closed the shop early but didn't sleep. The wind outside hissed through her window cracks like venomous whispers, dragging her back to a memory at 12 years old when someone threw bread at her and yelled "Black rat," then set their dog loose to chase her. May's bakery kitchen had never felt dark even with just a single yellow bulb overhead. It had always felt warm, at least it used to. Now whenever she looked at the oven's glass door she thought she saw shadows, not rats, not people, just a feeling like someone somewhere was watching. A few days later, 3 city health inspectors called to schedule a routine check. 2 days after that, anonymous note: "We're just following procedure, Ms. May," said one of the men in a light blue shirt and an official ID. His voice flat and cold. May nodded and smiled. Still she opened every fridge, every ingredient bin, every cupboard, even the trash cans. She knew everything was clean, cleaner than the conscience of some people who whispered in the dark. But once suspicion takes root, truth and lies become interchangeable. She stood quietly as they took notes, measured, poked and frowned, and in her mind an old memory returned. The first time she was stopped by police and searched just for walking home alone after 8 o'clock p.m. Eventually the inspector closed his clipboard and said, "No violations, thank you for your cooperation." May bowed her head politely, but when the door finally closed behind them she stood still for a long moment, then let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her shoulders dropped. In the days that followed the inspection, May realized that the most painful thing wasn't the accusations, it was the silence. Some of her regulars didn't come back. The eyes that once sparkled with warmth now hesitated, glanced away. A few people walked in, looked around the bakery, then mumbled something like "Oh, I forgot my wallet," and rushed out. On a local Norwood Facebook group, a post appeared with no name, no profile picture, just a vague message giving free bread to street kids. Sounds sweet, but does anyone check if they even wash their hands? Is that bakery really safe? The post had over 300 shares. The comments were sharp as razors, small slices but plenty. May read every word. She didn't respond, she didn't argue, she just woke up early like always and scrubbed the floors a little longer. That morning the oven still hummed, the air still smelled of warm dough, but the shop felt emptier. Even the homeless boy, the one she'd always saved bread for, hadn't returned. She didn't know why, didn't know what had happened, and that not knowing, that hollow uncertainty, hurt more than anything. That evening May didn't eat dinner. She thought to herself, maybe I was wrong not for baking but believing kindness could actually change a person's heart. Exactly 1 week after the inspection, the neighborhood of Norwood was buzzing. An elderly man was hospitalized with severe diarrhea. A group of school children complained of stomach pain after a birthday party, and just like that the whispers caught fire. Food poisoning. Some blamed the bread, others said they'd seen a rat dart past an oven somewhere down the street. No one said May's name out loud, but everyone knew Walter didn't need to speak. He simply offered his condolences to those feeling ill, then handed out free pastries to new customers. Just a taste of what clean baking feels like. He posted a TikTok video with a glowing Caption: real bread, real ingredients, not something handed out on a sidewalk. May watched the clip in her kitchen, her fingers curled into fists. Her eyes remained dry, she didn't even have tears left. The next morning her shop still opened. A few people came by, mostly those who had always believed in her. They didn't say much, they just ordered, paid, and gave her a look that said, "We see you, we trust you." May thanked them all, but when she wrapped up the last loaf of the day, her hands trembled slightly, and one thought repeated again and again: "If I fall this time, will anyone stand beside me?" His name was Caleb Thomas, 28 years old, white, a contract delivery driver for small businesses around Norwood, a job with no benefits, no stability, no one who'd remember his name. If he didn't show up tomorrow, he had delivered to Maya's bakery before, only a few times, mostly flour and milk from the distributor, but every time he came she greeted him by name, asked "Tough day?" and handed him a small pastry free of charge. "Here you go, no one should walk around with an empty stomach." Caleb would just smile, nod, and keep moving, but something about it stuck with him. In a world full of rushing and cold faces, May was the only one who looked at him like he mattered. Then one day his route changed. He got assigned across the street to Walter's shop, a high-end bakery, better pay, and Walter, he treated people exactly how a rich white business owner might treat a delivery guy. He never learned Caleb's name, never said hello, just gave orders like talking to a vending machine. "Leave it in the back storage. Doors open, no eye contact, no thanks." Caleb didn't mind, he was used to it, but then he saw the storage room. The first time Caleb opened the storage room door, he couldn't believe his eyes. The floor was slick with grease and crumbs. In one corner a bag of flour was damp and turning green with mo. At Ryer, an old refrigerator buzzed loudly in the corner, its door barely shut. Inside, discolored deli meat and leaking cheese packets. He looked around, no one paid attention. An employee walked by carrying a tray of pastries without even glancing at the mess, like this was all normal. Caleb thought about ignoring it. A job was a job, but later, when he watched Walter smiling on a live stream saying, "We select ingredients like we'd select gold," a knot formed in Caleb's gut. He thought of May. She didn't live stream, didn't brag about imported goods, she just handed him warm pastries with tired hands and real kindness. Then one day, almost by accident, he snapped a photo, and a thought crept in: if I say something, what happens next? Caleb, Saturday, alone in his damp rented room, his phone rested on the table screen, glowing with the photo he had taken. He knew posting it wouldn't just be about justice. He could lose his job. Walter might sue, and let's be honest, who would believe a nameless delivery guy? But if he stayed silent, what then? He thought of the kids who used to get bread from May's shop. That one boy huddled in the alley holding a warm loaf like it was Christmas morning. He thought of the baseless rumors of how people started avoiding her store, how even a glance across the street now carried judgment. And he thought, if I stay quiet, I'm no different from those rotting shelves. That night Caleb didn't sleep. Morning, he posted the photo. No names, no accusations, just a caption: when food stops being about nourishment. The photo went live at 8 o'clock a.m. By noon it had over 20,000 views. At first the comments were cautious, skeptical, then came the outrage. And then the connections. Someone mentioned they'd seen trucks pulling up to Walter's bakery late at night. Another said they'd gotten sick after eating there. One woman swore, "I always thought something smelled off about that place." And soon a name popped up. Is this the elite bakery in Norwood? Caleb didn't answer, but someone online matched the stained concrete wall in the photo with the back of Walter's shop. By late afternoon the local news picked it up. Small town blogs followed. A reporter even came to Norwood, stood right between the two bakeries, one empty, one still crowded, and asked live on air, "When you take that first bite, who do you really trust that night?" Norwood didn't sleep. May's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts poured in from old friends, suppliers, even unknown numbers. Everyone was asking about the video going viral. No one said it outright, but everyone knew the one who had spread lies about her was being exposed. May didn't respond. She Saturday quietly outside the bakery next to the small wooden table where Mrs. Miller used to sip her tea. On the table a cold cup of tea and a perfectly intact apple tart. Her hands rested in her lap still, but her eyes bloodshot, because she didn't feel relieved. Yes, the truth was coming to light, but inside there was no sense of victory. She didn't want revenge, she just wanted to live, to bake, to be treated like a human being. The next morning reporters showed up with cameras, microphones flashing lights. Do you feel vindicated now that your competitor's under investigation? Do you think this is your chance to become famous? May shook her head. My bread wasn't baked to bring anyone down, she said softly. I just wanted the poor folks in this neighborhood to have something warm and clean to eat from someone who doesn't look down on them. That sentence oddly quietly spread even faster than Caleb's video. Monday morning at exactly 9 o'clock a team of city inspectors stormed into Walter's bakery. The footage was live-streamed. The glass door slammed shut behind them. Walter's face turned pale. He tried to smile for the reporters, but his lips trembled and his hands twisted together like overworked dough. Cameras captured it all: the filthy storage room, rodent droppings, torn flour sacks, spoiled meat, forged production dates. The footage played over and over on local news with commentary. This was where Norwood's wealthiest ones put their trust, not for quality but for status. Walter was hit with massive fines. His bakery was shut down the same day. Customers canceled large event orders. Social media platforms pulled his ads. The name Buelling Erie Elite vanished from Google Maps in less than 48 hours. Norwood was shaken, but no one came to May. No one said sorry, no bouquet of flowers, no text admitting they were wrong, just silence, thick, heavy, suffocating. 3 days later the homeless boy May used to feed came back. His clothes were still worn and torn, but his eyes were bright. In his hand a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was messy and crooked, but the message was clear. I'm sorry, I ran. Mom said not to take food from strangers, but I was hungry and your bread was the only thing that made me feel full and happy. May didn't say a word. She pulled him close and hugged him silently. Tears welled in her eyes, falling gently onto the boy's ragged shirt, warm like the oven's glow on a winter morning. That afternoon a white man in a neatly pressed shirt walked into the shop. He looked uneasy. I once shared that post saying your bakery wasn't clean, he stammered. I didn't know, I'm sorry. May looked at him for a long moment, then handed him a small tray of pastries. What kind of filling would you like? The man froze, his old eyes clouded with guilt, then slowly he bowed his head. Apple please, thank you. 1 week after the scandal, May's bakery was busier than ever, not just with returning regulars but also newcomers. People from nearby neighborhoods even. Some from across the city. They came because they'd heard, because they wanted to taste the bread of the woman who held her dignity through the storm. One newspaper headline read: "A small bakery defeats a big lie." A filmmaker reached out about doing a documentary on May. She turned it down. She didn't need the spotlight, she needed trust. Mrs. Miller, when asked for an interview, only said one thing: that girl doesn't just bake good bread, she softens hearts. May still got up at 4 o'clock a.m, still opened the bakery at 5 a.m, still needed dough like always. But now, when she unlocked the door, she saw smiles, she saw gentle eyes, she saw white folks, black folks, rich, poor, all standing in the same line, all laughing, all choosing their bread together. No one mentioned Walter, no one needed to, because kindness, like the scent of warm bread, once it spreads, finds a place to stay. Early morning, a soft breeze, the Sunday hadn't fully risen, just brushed its gold across the thinning trees of late autumn. May unlocked her bakery door at 5 a.m. Same as always, in her hand was a rusted keyring, one charm dangling, a tiny bread-shaped keychain, a gift from a homeless child she once fed. The bell above the door gave its familiar gentle chime. The kitchen greeted her with the smell of flour, butter, and the cool dampness of tiled floors. No cameras, no reporters, no long lines, just a quiet morning, the kind she'd wished for a long time. May tied her apron, rolled up her sleeves, washed her hands, lit the oven. She no longer thought of Walter. His name had faded like dust caught in a gust of wind. People didn't speak of him anymore, not because they forgot, but because there was no reason to remember. It was Wednesday. Mrs. Miller would come, so with the curly-haired boy Caleb would stop by for his usual cinnamon special, the one she always wrapped by hand. A new family had ordered a birthday cake. They had once hesitated, once looked at her with guarded eyes. Now they called her Miss May of Norwood Street. The bell rang again. A little blonde girl, maybe 10 years old, walked in, smiling wide. She handed May a crayon-colored card, a giant cake with eyes, a smile, and a pink heart on top. May smiled, took her hand gently. "What kind of pastry would you like today, sweetheart?" "The same one you gave me last time," the girl said proudly. "But I have money now." She pulled out a crumpled dollar from her coat pocket. May chuckled, a real laugh. She wrapped the treat and said, "This one's a morning gift. Save your money for more crayons." The girl beamed, shouted, "Thank you," and skipped out the door like a burst of sunshine. May stood still for a moment. Her hand rested lightly on the wooden counter outside. The street was still the same, but inside her heart everything had changed. Not because the bakery was famous, not because the med